Polls have closed in 2 states, in Indiana and Kentucky, and already, gentlemen, we have a little bit of news, and that is in Kentucky, we are able to say that it is undecided. With what, 15% or more of the vote in, it is now too close to call. Ken, do you want to explain the difference between those two terms?
The difference between those two terms, Judy, is that it's undecided when we open it up. We don't have enough votes at all. But after we have 15% of the vote in, at least 15% of the vote in, or it has remained undecided for an hour, we make it too close to call. Then we know the race is going to be really tight.
And in the Hoosier State, Indiana, the presidential, Clinton and Dole, CNN is still saying that that race is undecided. 270 electoral votes are needed, and so far in CNN's election night coverage, President has 32, Bob Dole, nothing.
CNN coverage of Election 96. Live from CNN Center, here are Bernard Shaw, Judy Woodruff, Bill Schneider, and Ken Bodie.
So we're off and running. We have electoral votes up on the board, and here we go.
That's right. We're going to see what's going on in some of these states that are closing in this hour.
Looking at Florida now, with 25 electoral votes, CNN declares that President Clinton has won this very important state.
Major victory. This state hasn't voted Democratic since 1976. A lot of senior citizens in Florida, and the Medicare issue might have been big.
The polls have also just closed in the state of New Hampshire. Bill Clinton won it by just a hair in 1992. And Ken Bodie?
Judy, he started his last day of his last campaign in New Hampshire. It was very emotional for Bill Clinton, and he pretty much knew he would win this one.
Looking at Vermont, a declared winner for those 3 electoral votes, Bill Clinton.
Vermont hadn't voted Democratic since 1964 until 92. It went for Clinton then. It's going for Clinton now. It's a Republican state, but a liberal Republican state.
Georgia, it's very close in the Peach State. Bill Clinton won it barely in 92, and it's still undecided, Ken, at this hour.
That's right. He did win it barely in 92. In 1992, it was a 1-point state, and it's shaping up to be something like a 1-point state again tonight.
In Thomas Jefferson State, Virginia, 13 electoral votes. This race undecided at this hour.
Virginia has not voted for a Democrat for president since 1964. It didn't vote for Jimmy Carter. And remember, this is a big tobacco state.
And another southern undecided, South Carolina. This is a state that the Dole people were counting on, Ken Bodie.
Well, I think it's undecided because it's so soon after the polls close. You're absolutely right. The Dole people were counting on South Carolina, and I bet they still are.
2 other states looking at them quickly. Kentucky, this one is too close to call. And in Indiana, we're saying it is still undecided.
This hour, let's take a look at that all-important electoral map and what we have. It's not a lot, but we have something. It's Bill Clinton has nailed down 32 electoral votes. At this hour, Bob Dole, nothing. But the night is young, the night's early, and those numbers will rise as the minutes go by. The polls have closed in 3 more states at 7:30 in the East. At this point, Bill Clinton has 58 electoral votes. Bob Dole, nothing yet.
CNN coverage of Election 96. Live from CNN Center, here are Judy Woodruff, Bernard Shaw, Bill Schneider, and Ken Bodie.
And the biggest electoral prize at this half hour, we can tell you, is the state of Ohio. CNN calls that the state of Ohio has been won by President Clinton. This is a big victory, Ken Bodie, for the Democrats.
That is true. No Republican has ever been elected without carrying Ohio, and it's also further bad news because for the last 30 years, this state has voted for the winning candidate.
CNN declares that Bill Clinton has won West Virginia's 5 electoral votes.
Not a big surprise. West Virginia is reliably Democratic. Every congressman, senator, the governor, and both houses of the state legislature controlled by the Democrats.
Polls have also just closed in the state of North Carolina, but at this hour, it is undecided among the three gentlemen you see there on the screen.
Judy, this is fairly typical for North Carolina. This is A generally Republican state in presidential races, but George Bush won this state by less than 1% last time, his very closest state.
These next two are going to surprise, if not shock you. First, in Indiana, CNN says that this one is too close to call. And in Kentucky, again, 8 electoral votes in Kentucky, too close to call. And look at the percentage of reports.
Here are 3 states where the polls closed half an hour ago, as yet undecided. Georgia, the Peach State. Virginia, the Old Dominion, still undecided. And South Carolina, in the presidential contest, undecided.
Now let's move over to the electoral map to show you what we have so far. President Clinton leading Bob Dole, 58 electoral votes. The magic number is 270. Remember this number, 240 electoral votes needed in this election tonight. And CNN is declaring that in Texas, the winner of Texas's 32 electoral votes is Bob Dole.
Bob Dole was counting on Texas, a state that hasn't gone Democratic since 1976, and where Republicans have made big inroads. If he didn't carry Texas, he wouldn't have had a prayer.
Pennsylvania, another big electoral vote state. Bill Clinton, the winner.
This state has voted Republican at state levels, Democrat for president recently, and it's not been wrong in 30 years.
In the land of Lincoln, 22 electoral votes. President Clinton winning the state.
Talk about a bellwether state. This is one, too. All winning candidates this century have carried Illinois, with only 2 exceptions. Woodrow Wilson in 16 and Carter in 76 did not carry Illinois.
Another Midwestern industrial state in Bill Clinton's corner, Michigan, and its 18 electoral votes.
One of the most memorable moments of this campaign was when Bob Dole went back to that Battle Creek Veterans Hospital where he spent 2 years recovering from his war wounds. Michigan, however, did not vote with Dole.
In New Jersey, CNN declares President Clinton taking over this state as he did in 1992.
Bob Dole used Governor Whitman's come-from-behind victory as a model for his campaign, and the fact that she promised and delivered a very big tax cut, but it didn't work.
The state of Massachusetts for Bill Clinton, all 12 electoral votes. Missouri, the show-me state for the president, for Bill Clinton. Tennessee, the volunteer state, 11 electoral votes in Bill Clinton's corner. Maryland, a state that has gone Democratic, now has gone Democratic once again. And Connecticut, 8 electoral votes for Bill Clinton.
Bob Dole has something to cheer about in Oklahoma. He is winning that state tonight, along with its 8 electoral votes. And in Kansas, guess what? The home state of this former senator goes to Bob Dole. In Maine, President Clinton takes off 4 electoral votes there, as he does in Delaware, 3 electoral votes there, and no surprise, in the District of Columbia, the president winning handily 3 electoral votes.
The polls have just closed also in the state of Mississippi, but it is undecided. We do not have a result yet from Mississippi. And Alabama has just gone for Bob Dole. We declare, CNN declares Bob Dole the winner in the state of Alabama. This is a place that President Clinton had campaigned in just a few days ago. Here is a look at this hour, just a moment after 8 o'clock in the East. Bill Clinton, 198 electoral votes, those states that you see in blue. Bob Dole, 55. And the big one on that map, gentlemen, is Texas, and that's one that comes sweet to Bob Dole.
That's right.
CNN has made the call that Bob Dole won Indiana. You just saw that. It is 8:30 in the East, 5:30 on the Pacific time zone, and at this hour, Bill Clinton has won 204 electoral votes, 66 away from the magic number 270.
Concern, you can't say. All right, now Arkansas, the president's home state. Add Arkansas to the growing number of states going the president's way this night, as Ken and Bill alluded to. His early and overwhelming success was expected, of course, but at least one prize must seem especially sweet: the Sunshine State, Florida. CNN declares a winner in the Tar Heel State. Bob Dole has won North Carolina.
North Carolina voted for George Bush by the narrowest of margins last time, and the Republicans have retained it.
It's a narrow.
William Jefferson Clinton has a job for 4 more years.
He becomes the first Democrat since Franklin Roosevelt to win re-election to the White House.
CNN coverage of Election 96. Live from CNN Center, here are Bernard Shaw, Judy Woodruff, Bill Schneider, and Ken Bodie.
Well, he has 4 more years, but that's only part of the story this election night, but it's clearly the lead at this hour.
He has won the presidency. We don't know what kind of mandate he has. That depends on what happens in Congress and whether he gets over 50%. But look at where he was 2 years ago and where he is now. 275, that's 5 votes over a majority. 2 years ago, Bill Clinton was toast. I mean, no one would have bet on his re-election. He was finished. He had lost both houses of Congress for the first time in 40 years. This is one of the great miraculous comebacks in American history.
One of the main reasons, in fact, perhaps the main reason we're able to call Bill Clinton the winner at this hour is New York. It has the second biggest electoral prize, Ken Bodie.
33 electoral votes. It's not really the purpose of putting a vice presidential candidate on the ticket to help you win his home state, but Jack Kemp didn't help with New York.
Going to the dairy state, which has a Republican governor, that didn't stop Bill Clinton from winning Wisconsin's electoral votes.
Wisconsin did go Democratic for Clinton in 92. It went for Dukakis and for Carter twice. It's voted Democratic a lot. It's a very strongly Catholic state.
Another state Bill Clinton felt pretty confident about, Minnesota. It's the only state to vote Democratic in 6 of the last 7 elections, Ken.
That's right, 10 electoral votes. The only Democrat to lose this state in modern times was the neighbor, George McGovern from South Dakota in 72.
The polls just closed in Louisiana. We're still saying at this moment, this one is undecided.
This is a southern state that went for Clinton in 92. Most states are voting the way they did back then. It's very heavily black and also the most Catholic state in the country, in the South.
Arizona, the longest string of consecutive presidential votes. It last voted Democratic in 1948. It is undecided, though, at this hour.
Bill Clinton had fun playing in Arizona, bringing his new AARP card out there and talking to the seniors in Arizona about Medicare. He tried hard to put this state into play, and he apparently succeeded.
Now, let's go to Colorado first. That is undecided at this hour. In Nebraska, which is coming up next. We'll come back to that in just a moment. Let's go to New Mexico. CNN declares that President Clinton has won New Mexico's 5 electoral votes, and he has done ditto in Rhode Island. Also a winner tonight for the president. 4 electoral votes there.
North Dakota, undecided. The polls have just closed in this state with 3 electoral votes, but still no winner. South Dakota, the neighboring state to the south, of course, 3 electoral votes, undecided at this hour. But we can call Bob Dole the winner in the state of Wyoming. And let's take a look at the electoral map at this hour. 267 votes, electoral votes, we can call in Bill Clinton's corner to 92 for Bob Dole. And we just saw pictures a moment ago of the Dole headquarters in Washington, Bernie.
Where Candy?
2 Senate races to call and 1 state in the presidency, and that is the state of Louisiana. It gave President Clinton in 1992 his biggest margin in the South outside of Arkansas, and we are saying that Bill Clinton has won Louisiana in 1996, and it's 9 electoral votes.
Now taking you to the all-important map that matters most of all in this presidential race. President Clinton at this hour has 284 electoral votes. Challenging Bob Dole has 96 electoral votes. And we continue the count.
But as good a shape the president is in these electoral votes, his coattails were not long enough, Bernie, as you said earlier tonight, to help the Democrat hang on to the Senate seat in Arkansas.
Clinton has gone over the electoral top for re-election, 291 to 105, but don't let that deter you from voting in 5 western states.
CNN coverage of Election 96. Live from CNN Center, here are Bernard Shaw, Judy Woodruff, Bill Schneider, and Ken Bodie.
And if you're still voting, please remember the 5 states I alluded to: California, Hawaii, Oregon, Washington, and Alaska. Bill Clinton reelected.
That's right. 5 states. The polls have just closed in those 5 states. We're going to tell you shortly what happened, or at least what we think happened in several of them.
Right. So far, this looks pretty much like a status quo election to me. People are reelecting the president, and all the incumbents just about have been reelected all across the country for the Senate. We'll see what happens in the House as the night goes on.
We haven't mentioned yet Ross Perot. Let me just tell you right now briefly that he is pulling in the high single digits basically across the country, a little bit in the low double digits here and there.
Okay, now we have some states to declare, states with the polls having just closed. In the Hawkeye state, Iowa, President Clinton does as he did in '92. He wins.
In 1992, the Iowa vote exactly mirrored the national vote. 43% for Clinton, 37% Bush, and 19% for Perot.
Utah. This is a state that gave Bill Clinton his worst results in 1992, and once again it's done the same. Bob Dole, the winner.
Worst results, I'm not sure yet, but it's not been a Democratic state since LBJ in 1964.
Bob Dole winning ditto in Idaho. 4 electoral votes, Bill.
Ditto in Idaho and Utah. Hasn't voted Democratic since 1964. Clinton only got 28% of the vote in 1992 in Idaho.
And Nevada, undecided. This is a state that was, I think Bill Clinton was the first Democrat in 28 years to carry it the last time. We don't know what's going to happen this time.
Well, our crack research team, Judy, tells me that Nevada has the highest divorce rate in the nation. And I don't know what that means exactly in terms of presidential voting.
Well, let's move on to Montana then. We have to say Montana right now, undecided.
Big surprise in '92 when Montana voted for Bill Clinton. A lot of people think Perot's very high vote there, 26%, might have taken a lot of votes from the Republicans and helped Bill Clinton carry the state. With a lower Perot vote, can he do it this time?
And the state of Kentucky, President Clinton, the winner. This state keeps up its record of voting with the winner. What, Ken, over the last, this will now be 8 elections it's voted
That's
with
right.
the winner.
It's a genuine bellwether presidential state. Bob Dole said earlier this year, if Bob Dole wins Kentucky, I'll be president. He's not going to win Kentucky, and he's not going to be president.
And we can report to you that Bob Dole is the winner in the state of Virginia. 13 electoral votes. This is a state that George Bush won in '92, and it's a state that is, frankly, dependably Republican, but it was a toss-up for a long time this year.
That's right. The rule is holding. This is a state that went for Bush in '92, and it's gone for Dole in '96. And it's also, of course, a big tobacco state, which probably hurt Bill Clinton.
It's the last time.
Hey, thanks, Frank. First to the West Coast. In California, CNN is declaring at this moment that President Clinton has won California's juicy 54 electoral votes, a state he worked very, very hard and repeatedly.
Went there almost 30 times. Bob Dole put everything he had into the last few weeks in California, spent $1.5 million a week. It didn't work.
The state of Washington, we can also say that Bill Clinton has won. This is a state that he won in 1992, Ken Bodie, and more good news for the Democrats.
It's a state that's become more and more Democratic in presidential voting as time goes on, as are all of the states down this Pacific Rim: Washington, Oregon, California.
11 electoral votes in Washington, and in Oregon, CNN declares at 11 o'clock tonight, President Clinton has won the state of Oregon. 7 electoral votes in Oregon going to Mr. Clinton.
Strong environmental constituency in Oregon, and Clinton was strong on that issue. Perot did very well last time in Oregon. He got a quarter of the vote, but this time Clinton kept it as he did in '92.
And the state of Hawaii, a state that has gone Republican only twice since it became a state in 1959 for Bill Clinton.
Not many electoral votes on Hawaii, but again, it's like all of these states on the Pacific Rim. They are becoming more and more Democratic in presidential voting.
Coming back to North Dakota, CNN declares that Bob Dole has won the state of North Dakota with 3 electoral votes.
North Dakota is not on the Pacific Rim. It's an interior state. Hasn't voted for a Democrat since 1964, and it didn't do it this time. Voted for Bush in '92 and Clinton in '96. And Dole in '96.
Okay. Frank, we have, incidentally, if you're keeping track and wondering about 6 states, we indeed have not called 6 states. We have not called Arizona. We have not called Colorado, Georgia, South Dakota, Nevada, or Montana. And also, people are still voting up there in Alaska.
State to call for Bob Dole, and that is South Dakota. This is a state that George Bush won, the Republicans won in 1992, so it's not a big surprise, but it's been dangling out there, and we just are able to call it just now.
Now, let's go back up to the Northeast in New Hampshire. Robert Smith, the incumbent Republican, he hung on by his fingernails, and he's going to be going back to Washington. Bob's.
You can see that's something he's been talking about on the trail. Now let's look at the electoral map, Bernie.
Bill Clinton has 375 electoral votes, Bob Dole 135. CNN shows that the president has won 30 states plus the District of Columbia, and Senator Dole, Jack Kemp, having won 16 states so far. We still have not called the states of Colorado, Georgia, Nevada, and Montana.
This is already an improvement by 5 electoral votes over what Bill Clinton won in 1992. In 1992, he had 370 to George Bush's 168. We don't know whether it's going to go higher because of those states that are still outstanding.
There's so much more to tell you about this election night. Frank Sesno is standing by to take us to the congressional desk in the very latest. We go to Frank when we come back.
Clinton's over the top, but as you just saw, there are still 4 states outstanding that we do not know the results of, and we will wait to see. He's over the 270, well over the 270. He's at, what, 375? Right. But, and better than he had in 1992. I just want to say that this man, and we pointed it out already, has come back from what was the most disastrous loss for a first-term president, really since Herbert Hoover. When you look at what the Republicans did in 1994, he has come back to win re-election.
Judy, there are 3 things that we've been looking at all night long. One is the Electoral College, which is a landslide. It could be as many as 400 votes in the Electoral College when the final states get in that are now too close to call. The second thing is, does he get 50%? And it looks as though he's going to nudge up past 50% in this thing. And the third is, does the House and the Senate go Democratic? And that's the one place where Clinton fell down. And that is the one thing that Bill Clinton is going to have to live with this entire next 4 years, or at least 2 of the 4 years that he's got a Republican House, a Republican Senate. He's got Newt Gingrich, who really did win tonight as well, given that he was an issue for the Democrats.
The most remarkable thing I've seen tonight is that all the states that went for Clinton last time went for him this time. He only added 2 states, Florida and Arizona, that went for Bush last time, now went for Clinton. There's no mystery why that happened. Those are states with a large population of elderly voters who are probably very frightened over the Medicare issue. This is an election where Jesse Helms, the most conservative member of the Senate, and Paul Wellstone, the most liberal member of the Senate, got reelected. The House and the Senate remained about the same, so Republicans can come out claiming a victory. No net change in the Republican governorships. How did the voters vote in the end? They split 50-50 over Bill Clinton. Net bottom line here is, I think it was a status quo election. People were not angry for once. They did not vote for change. They voted to keep things about the way they are, not for gridlock, but to force both parties to try to work with each other.
And if I may just add one other point before Bernie does, I get goose pimples every time we have an election in this country because, frankly, we pass the power. It's in the hands of the president and the elected officials. It goes back to the people. They have their chance to throw the rascals out or to return someone to power. They have made their choice. They've made their decision. And not a drop of blood was shed. And this is one of the few countries in the world where that can happen. And it's, you know, it's exciting that we live in a country like the one we live in.
Not only no blood drop, but no shots fired either. Ken Bodie making the point about, and you, Judy, that the president made this comeback, especially after the disaster of 1994. The Republican Party actually helped William Jefferson Clinton in that comeback, especially when they voted to shut down Congress. The American people said the Republicans went too far. We did not send you to Washington to shut down the federal government. Bill Clinton used that partly as a springboard, and he was able to keep the liberal wing of his party placated or sedated, and he was able to move to the center and appeal to more conservative Democrats. So he has been re-elected tonight. The question is, how effectively will he be able to lead as the 105th Congress goes in January, controlled by the party that controlled it when they went home, the Republican Party? One final note. Judy and I, all of us, Ken Bodie, Bill Schneider, we've received a lot of mail. We thank you for the mail, and we thank you for the phone calls. A lot of Democrats have criticized us in our coverage, and conversely, a lot of Republicans have criticized us in our coverage. Never once in our coverage of this campaign story have we played favorites. We don't play favorites. We hope that all the efforts of the men and women here at CNN were conducive to your making an informed decision in the polls. For all of us and for hundreds of people you'll never know and never see, that concludes our coverage. And we leave you with sights and sounds of this election campaign 96. Behind us is the atrium here at CNN Center. And behind us, these buildings house all of the networks of CNN. And we leave you with these pictures.